didn't do anything with it either. It's a factory approved fitment method, right? Welcome to the shop. I'm Jared, and this is Wrench Every Day. Behind me here is our 1971 International Harvester Johnny Reb edition that we are turning into the Wrench Every Day muscle truck. We're fitting this beautiful Corvette C5 front suspension. We've got the LS's outside still to go in. I've got to give another big thanks to J&J Auto Wrecking. They're out of Ohio. These guys love to support a lot of the big YouTube channels, the small YouTube channels. They kind of believe in us. We love to give back to them as well. Make sure you're following them. They have Instagram. We'll put that in the description below. They've got Facebook. They do lots of cool specials and promotions on there. They have some of the best LS swaps. All of them come with security disabled. You can have top shelf, beautiful condition LS's with every broken manifold bolt already removed, ready for you to install, all the way down to ones that are kind of a small basket case. So if you've got more time than money, they've got an LS that's going to work for you as well. They also have good body panels and just easy to swap accident damage parts. So jump on their website. Make sure you let them know that we sent you because they've got a couple extra gifts for you. We left off the last episode with just everything stripped down and the subframe not sitting underneath, but we kind of got excited and wanted to see how much of a nightmare we were actually creating for ourselves. And turns out it's maybe only a slight bad dream because everything is fairly close to where it needs to live to actually get underneath the car. First matter of the day, it's going to be cutting down all of this slag with the 6-inch grinder here. That's Ridge's favorite tool.
Sir.
A problem we were running into, we've got the subframe assembly roughly placed and squared how we want, and as we came down, we ran into a power steering line clearance issue. That's an easy fix, bend a line or a new fitting. What's not as easy of a fix is when we have to line up our steering shaft. We can run a bunch of joints and angles to get where we need to, but they don't have Bluetooth steering just yet, so we have to make a hole. So we had to cut that clearance. That was that piece Randy marked out.
What we've done is cut out our old frame, which you can see is about 1/8 inch thick. And we're gonna come back in with this piece, which is 3/16 thick. So dramatically improving our wall thickness. And that's gonna get welded in to re-support the frame and carry that load and give us barely the necessary clearance we need to get the steering shaft through.
Anyone who's worried about changing engineered crumple zones, crash zones, impact safety, how much impact safety were these vehicles engineered with?
Not much, especially in 71.
Yeah. Not much as in not.
Yeah.
Now that we know that's getting to work, we'll be able to transition to start setting up our mounts for the front end. All right, so we've got sheet metal thrown on before we start doing any welding and heavy next steps because we had to see how the wheel would actually sit in there. And where we were thinking we would be too low, we've actually managed to pick the truck up a small amount, a mixture of obviously the taller rim and tire and just the height of the subframe sitting underneath. The ride height of the truck can be perfect. And you come up front and you can see where that subframe is, how low. We are gonna hopefully have so much mass down low in this truck that it'll be surprisingly good ripping it through some corners. And I think taking it up on a mountain road and someone being chased by this truck going quick might be a little alarming when they're in small Subaru sports cars, right? Ouch. So we're gonna pull the front sheet metal back off. We're gonna have to do those notches in the frame, get it tucked completely up. So back to work. This is pretty much a literal C-notch rather than the kick up that you commonly see for rear suspension. This is a section of 4-inch round that we cut in half, so we'll have both sides. We started rechecking some of our measurements, getting ready to build the reinforcement plates, and realized even though they're supposed to be relatively symmetrical stamped steel, they're not very symmetrical. The front cross member is not quite as true, and it's not an evidence of accident damage. It's probably a Friday afternoon truck where it was good enough and they made the slots a little bigger for the bumper to sit right. We are going to run a 1/4-inch plate. That cardboard's not staying. It's going to have both of our holes for the alignment dowel and for the actual mounting plate. And we are going to cut this section of the frame out to allow us plenty of room to actually move and position that large steel plate in here until it gets exactly where we need it to be. That cardboard drawing will actually get transferred into the real CAD. And then we will fire up the plasma torch, cut both of those shapes, and then we get back to fitting that thing in there. All right, so we're rolling about 12 hours into day 2. Jason, another member of SEBA, the community of communal international harvester ownership. So our update, we have mounts now made. We have some finish welding to do, but the front and rear is fully able to be attached. Try not to get in Randy's way. We were brainstorming how to do this rear mount and came out with this beautiful setup with this little kicker to go into. We are now just securing the upper control arms. We're not planning to do the mounts just yet. We just don't want them to drop and hang and put all of the weight onto the lower ball joints. But we are about to pick it up and let the frame fully support the new subframe, which is kind of a cool moment. And then the next thing we'll do, we have kind of reached fair confidence that this mount setup will not work just because it's going to be too low, and about here is going to end up into the firewall. But to confirm it, we're going to pull the transmission back off and go ahead and sling that in there in just a second to see if it's at all feasible to happen, or if we're going to just go ahead and go straight to the LQ4, build mounts off the frame and slide a little bit further forward. I was getting pretty excited about being able to use this setup because it'll sit so far down into the frame and will be a really cool performance adder, handling great. We're still gonna be able to set the engine lower than stock. It's gonna be a little bit lighter than stock, and obviously the complete worn out mess that is nowhere near as good as the handling that will be. So we'll set up again, pick the truck up, lower it down, and see how we can fit the engine and how much more work that's gonna be, right?
It's gonna be some work.
Yeah. So sometimes you end up a little surprised. It's not going to be a pleasure to service. It's not going to be easy to ever install or remove, but it actually is looking like we are going to fit all the Corvette parts. We're going to have to do some firewall clearance in this one spot and work on that transmission crossmember, which we were expecting to, and possibly remote locate our coil packs, but we might actually get our LS all the way in, completely down to the ground. So people may make fun of us when they pop the hood and don't see an engine because it's buried so deep in there. But I think that's the appropriate place for it. So that's a very encouraging thing. As we fought it, we kind of hit the point of on the fence of giving up or not giving up. Randy was very encouraged. He was on the slightly more encouraged than discouraged side, so we kept going, and it's going to be interesting to fit everything. Our coolant lines are close. I'm not going to be able to run these really cool headers. I'm going to have to get some of the super tight kind of cast headers that work well, but that should happen. So we're going to keep working a little bit more and then start wrapping up the day. And he didn't do anything with it either. It's a factory approved fitment method, right? All right, so just because things started to go successful with the hammer, we decided to go ahead and hang the sheet metal and show how low we've managed to get that engine. It is so far inside the engine bay. It is absurd considering the factory engine landed about here. The actual bell housing lived about here. You could almost service the entire transmission from the top. So our goal of moving weight back and down for handling is quite successful here. Spark plugs won't be as bad as we thought they might be. You can come right through the wheel well and get complete access to everything. So we're going to wrap it up. We've got to pick up some hardware in the morning. We'll get back on now setting up our upper control arm mounts and get our alignment dialed in, get it set down onto some wheels. So we're gonna go catch some sleep. This is a very tired crew. All right, so it's the morning of day 3. We're getting a little tired. This is the day we've got to get the truck rolling again. Unfortunately, overnight, the reality TV show wizards didn't come in and actually do all the work for us. So we have got to get the car rolling on its wheels. Or what is it? We've got to get the car done or we're going to lose the shop. Ultimate reality TV style. And by lose the shop, I mean, really, it's just unfortunately in the way, and we'll set it on some chassis dollies. But just the more we think about this truck, the more silly it gets and the more wonderful it is. What we're working on here is our steering shaft. And because of essentially where this comes out and the angle, normally you'd want this pointed down a little bit more, but in these trucks it comes out really, really steep. And then we have our steering shaft down here, and you can only have so much wiggle in each joint before you can run into binding. So we have our adapter joint, we're gonna have a secondary, and what happens when you run 3 joints with no support?
Well, it doesn't go where you want it to, so we've got a spherical rod end here that we can use to support that shaft. So essentially we have no more than 2 joints. We're doing the shaft right now before the control arms and anything else is in, because there's one way for the shaft to go. So we have to accommodate and build everything around whatever that steering shaft does. So it's not put something else in and make a pretty steering shaft. We're going to make the functional shaft as pretty as possible and then build around. So we'll go back to time lapse. Just kind of wanted to show that, because that is, you line it up a bunch, fiddle, measure, move a little, align and fiddle a little bit more. A lot to do.
we've got the steering shaft solution worked out. As we were trying to work with the column in its original position, we kind of reached a point that we'd have to fit 2 more joints in it, and kind of figured 5 joints would be just a few too many. So Randy took some measurements, and we actually recut the locating plate in slightly thicker steel on the plasma table, and that allowed us to lower the steering shaft basically from exiting this point all the way down to the bottom. And by doing that, it gave us a much better approach angle, where we had to cut almost 3 inches total between the shafts to realign it. All right, let's go over the quick update. We've been doing a lot of cutting, measuring, recutting, throwing away, remeasuring, and we now have both upper control arm mounts mocked up. These are just temporary shims to get things going. And we've been working to balance the camber left to right, where we're within, I think, 1/2 degree, and our caster, which is the orientation of the upper and lower ball joints forward to back, are now symmetrical. So we're going to be able to weld it in. One reason we're not chasing the exact precise number beyond symmetry is the moment we put the spring in it, the moment we put all the weight in it, all of that geometry is going to change once it's on the ground. The most important thing we've been chasing and working towards is the symmetry left to right, so we know our foundations are right. And then we still got a little bit of work to do on our final mount for the Heim joint, but with just this kind of temporary pinch here, it's turning smoothly, not binding, and giving us exactly what we need. So we're making headway. We're not very far from wheels, right? Wheels. Good. Yeah, because then this can go outside and you can get on with your work week, because this has been the weekend. And
yeah, it's been a long week.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jared.
And we are welded in. We are able to steer the truck. We're sitting right now at ride height, getting ready to build our shock mounts that are going to be reinforced, because we will be going to coilovers later on in the truck. So, hey Bosco. Apparently thinks you guys have a treat for him. But we are loaded up actually with all the weight right now, relatively sitting on the spring, getting an idea. And we've got all of the built-in alignment shims currently set on the outside. We'll actually need to bring this control arm out a fair amount, but again, once everything's fully set, that's when we will actually go to a laser alignment machine, set this thing up, and work on dialing that in between the upper and lower adjustment points and make that perfect. So wheels turn left and right, they go up and down. Soon they'll go up and down controlled, and then we'll have the wheels finally, and the body. A lot of work out of Randy and the guys from GRC. They've helped a ton. The big reason is he's got a lot of really fancy, nice fabrication tools and lots of really good experience. So I wanted to utilize him. So thank you.
You're welcome. Now get the damn thing out of my shop.
Thank you to Ridge. Leighton's not here today. Thank you to him as well. And this is the first time. Right now, we've kind of got a lot of funny toe, but let's put it on the ground. Don't forget to pull the lock. Yeah, there we go. The truck is supporting its own weight for the first time coming up. We don't have the shocks done yet because we're probably going to get coilovers, and it's going to change how we do it a little bit. All right. Toe is still a little off, but what do you think, Randy?
Springy.
Like we've got lots of clearance through that articulation, almost like we knew what we were doing and have done a Corvette suspension on the front of an international truck before, but
no, we just fumbled our way through it.
World first. I mean, and we actually discovered something else as we were kind of working along. This is officially a mid-engine truck. What signifies a mid-engine vehicle is just that the center mass Our center of gravity of the engine is behind the center line of the front wheel and in front of the center line of the rear wheel. We're obviously in front of the rear wheel. That's not a problem. But if we actually look, center line of the wheel, center line of the wheel, we are, like, our cylinders are behind. We just have to have the center of our mass behind. The whole engine is behind the center line of the wheel. We build a mid-engine truck. I mean,
I don't know if it was a great idea, but we did.
I mean, it's something done. So we built a super truck.
Super truck.
And we have enough room that we thought about putting the second LS on top of this one. It wouldn't do anything. It would just be a spare. So if we break down, there's an engine ready to go. Some other ideas is actually building a luggage compartment. So we could have a bed and a frunk, and then you take that out to service your engine. We're going to do one more thing before wrapping up all of the work, and that is hang the sheet metal on it. And you're going to pick that up and see how cool the truck looks right now. There we go. Sheet metal back on. It looks really easy on camera. We had to do a little bit of trimming for our steering shaft, but I don't know. I wasn't initially a fan of the 2015 Camaro SS wheels, but they kind of have the right amount of modern that it kind of works. I'm still not 100% sold, but they work for now. But it's so cool. You come around and that engine is just so much set back, buried. You look through the grill and you don't even see it. It's a truck that when people are walking by familiar with Internationals, out of the corner of the eye are just going to think there's no engine in it, when you really have to come in and just see how buried in the engine bay. It's so cool to consider that this truck 3 days ago had this mass of worn out and, quite frankly, incredibly dangerous suspension in it. And we're not running yet, but we now have a modern LS powertrain, modern suspension, and an incredible foundation to keep on upgrading. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Wrench Every Day. Appreciate you guys hanging out while we're building an insane truck that is world firsts. I mean, it's always exciting when you can claim that. It may not be something anyone cares about, but we've earned ourselves the world first. C-Vive, front suspension, International 1010, Johnny D, Rebel, Vet truck, other things that have LS engines that are now mid-engine, and lots of cool things. So I'm Jared, reminding you to always
make questionable decisions.
Close enough, and
Question Jared's choices.